All right. We're live, Sarah.
Here it is.
Yay, we're here. Welcome, everyone. As you pop on YouTube and Facebook, please put your name and where you're from. Let us know who's here today, and we'll get going in a second. I love it. This is our third Lunch and Learn, our third live event. And it's brought to you by the Peak Leadership Experience, which is a leadership program designed for professional women to gain leadership skills and, most important, more confidence. So that's what we're about. And these live events, which are new, the intention of the live events is to invite extraordinary women who live unique lives and share relatable stories about their professional experience. So that's been so much fun. If you tuned in last week, we had Teresa Redmond, and she spoke about sacrificing to step up and her point of what is that sense of responsibility to be a strong female leader and even in a busy life to step up and lead. So that was a lot of fun. And this week, we have Sarah Knapp, and she's going to talk about, she's going to talk about self-directed leadership and how do you build capacity within yourself as an entrepreneur when the plate is full and leadership development has to become self-motivated. Sarah and I met at my Peak Leadership Experience program, and we really are kindred spirits in the world of being an entrepreneur, so we share that. And Sarah is the founder and CEO of an event called Mappy Hour. I love your unique niche, Sarah, and that's connecting urban dwellers to outdoor recreation in cities across North America. You're the founder and director of New York City's 10-day citywide festival called Outdoor Fest, and you're the publisher and editor-in-chief of Off Metro, an award-winning green travel publication for urban dwellers to get out of town. And I love this, car optional. Your love for adventure has brought you to the summit of Africa and the ski slopes of Patagonia. And you believe that the best way to explore a city is via bicycle, and the best way to connect with someone is outdoors. So touche. Welcome, Sarah. Thank you for coming and joining me on my new live experience, since you're pretty experienced in this world. So I look to you as my mentor.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, I feel like that's like the upside of COVID is that we're hanging out from different sides of the country right now.
I know. I never would have met you otherwise.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really fun. I want to start by asking you, Sarah, what inspired you to choose the topic of self-leadership?
Yeah. So I was thinking about leadership and kind of how my understanding of leadership has evolved just over the past year or over the past 7 years of building my business. And the biggest thing for me is that I've had to figure out what leadership even is, what it means, and how to invest in learning for myself and developing myself, because I don't work in a big company where that's just kind of included. And, figuring out both like between my time and also just like the business's resources, how much money do we invest in Sarah Knapp as the CEO versus, how much time and money you spend on actually building a business. So that's something that is kind of always on my mind when I'm thinking about leadership. And I thought it would be an interesting thing to bring here because I assume there are a lot of women who are building their own companies. And this is a question that you continually have to ask yourself and deal with.
What does building capacity actually mean to you?
Yeah. It's a great question. So there are two ways. One is like in myself, and then the second is in my business. So I think the business one I was kind of alluding to with the resources as well, of like, what does it look like to create a line item for self-development, or to make sure there's a specific amount of time every month, every year, however it's, kind of set up to build in leadership to a business where, and I should say I'm a solopreneur. I don't have a full-time staff or anything like that, to give people a sense of what I'm talking about in terms of that capacity building and making sure that there's kind of this like infrastructure for making sure that like leadership is happening or leadership development is happening. And then for myself, I think it's more creating space for it and creating space for me mentally to think of myself as a leader. And also, again, like being able to commit time to self-development when a million other things are happening. And, that doesn't always feel like it's the priority.
I always like to say that entrepreneurs are great at seeing around the corners at the program that doesn't already exist. I know that's been true for me, but then there becomes this moment, this realization that, oh my God, I've got to run a business too. Once I have that great idea. How do you think, Sarah, you've evolved most as a leader?
Yeah. So I think that there have always, obviously, like I started a business, so I've always in some aspects seen myself as a leader, at least the leader of this business. But I think I've always felt a little bit separate from the idea of leadership. That always felt like that was like the CEO of big corporation is a leader and you need to like have got your MBA to be a leader. And that always felt really separate from me. And I never really put like a packaging to it of like, this is what this means. So I'm going to plug Peak here because I kind of dove into Peak. I don't know if I've ever told you this. I saw it on like a Facebook group. Like you mentioned that you were doing it and I had some extra time because of COVID. And I was like, yeah, I should probably be investing in myself a little bit as a leader. And when I did the program, I started reading a few books at the same time. I started thinking about myself as a leader and some of the qualities that I think I bring to the company as leadership in ways that I just hadn't thought of it before. So I think it was just like a mental transformation of, these things that I'm already doing that I obviously do. Like some of the things are just like, yeah, of course I communicate, well, or whatever it is, and re-seeing them as leadership qualities.
What was reaffirmed for you as a leader?
Yeah. I mean, I mentioned communication. I think that's something that has come naturally to me. And it just felt like, well, of course, if you're building a partnership centric business, you need to be good at communicating. And the fact that is a leadership skill and like that there's a connection, that there's a thread between having that skill and seeing yourself as a leader, I think was important or was transformational a little bit. What's another one? I think empathy. I don't know how to say this without, I don't know if like society has put this in my head or what, but I think empathy for me had always felt like it was a weakness, not a strength. And so being able to look at empathy as a strength and as something that actually makes you better as a leader, as a listener, whatever that is something that I'm still working on, right? Because it feels like sometimes it's like, why do you care? Not like, why do you care? But like, you can't care about everything. So like, focus, and you do need to do that. But having that level of empathy and that emotional connection actually being something that is a strength also, I think was an element of that.
What inspired you to become an entrepreneur and work for yourself?
Great question. So Outdoor Fest was the original company and started that in 2014. I had been living in New York City for a whole bunch of years, and I went to NYU undergraduate. When I graduated from NYU, I went out to Alta to be a ski bum for a year and loved it. I had never really experienced that type of like outdoor culture, but it was really cool to be around people who cared and were so passionate about snow and the radar and, what bindings their skis had and stuff like that. But I definitely felt like there was some big elements that were important to me lacking in just that lifestyle. So I wanted to move back to New York City, and I wanted to make sure while I was there, I still had a connection to the outdoors because I realized both elements were really important to me as a person. So I started working for an outdoor guiding company based in the city. And from there, jumped off to start Outdoor Fest in 2014. So the idea of Outdoor Fest was kind of leveraging a lot of the discovery I had done on my own, whether that was like where to go kayaking in the city or the fact that you can surf in New York City or whatever it may be, and trying to figure out how to amplify that. So thousands of people could be learning that a year and connect and find kind of that balance that I had been looking for.
I love that. What was the feedback you got on that, on bringing that to the city?
It was great. I mean, I think that, you know, the initial challenge is that people don't know what exists and don't even think about looking for it. You know, you wouldn't be like, can I surf in New York City, unless you're like a diehard surfer and that's like the thing you do. But when people hear, you know, you can take the subway to the beach and rent a surfboard or take a surf lesson, that feels very attainable to a lot of people in a way that maybe they hadn't thought of before. So I think overall, it opened up New York and like the perspective of what New York City is as a, you know, physical environment in a really exciting way.
I love that. What's your biggest challenge as an entrepreneur?
My biggest challenge is making money. No, I think I definitely I am super excited about the community and the programming, and that's like where, if you know, we did our gosh, what was it called? Like the pros and cons list, the love it, hate it exercise in Peak, where you write down all the things you love and all the things that you don't love as much. And my love it list is like everything from like talking to people, hearing, like, I love when people share that they've gone out on their first hike or something like that, or they went surfing and they had never realized that they could do that in New York. I keep using surfing. A very small population go surfing, but it is like a very dramatic example because it's New York City. And, you know, creating content and telling stories, like that's really what gets me so excited. And then things like, pitching sponsors and selling and doing biz dev is like less my passion, but very much a needed function of running a business. And so I find it challenging sometimes to have the motivation to do that because it is very important, obviously, when I want to be doing all this other stuff with the community.
You and I, as kindred entrepreneurs, talked about that stress of having to do it all. Like you have this great idea, and now I've got a market and all these pieces. Talk about the stresses you face as a business owner, and then we'll lead into how you manage them.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, when you own your own business, 100% of the responsibility is on you for everything. So the stresses change depending on the situation, but like everything from someone not enjoying themselves to someone getting hurt, right? Like that's all on you. And you can prepare as much as possible, but there's still like an element of uncertainty, of course. And then, so I think that is a big stressor for me, especially with like outdoor adventure activities. And then I think just like trying to do it all, right? Because you can do better always, right? Like there's always a way to optimize and be growing your newsletter more, or to be creating even better Instagram content, or whatever it is that you're doing. Like there are a million ways that you could be better. So
it never ends. It never ends.
And there are people that literally only do Instagram, right? So that is what they do all week for 40 to 60 hours or whatever their week is, and that is not an option for me as a business owner. So I think there's just always a struggle of like prioritizing things and making sure that I can set reasonable goals and be happy when I achieve them.
How do you create balance for finding time for yourself, as well as, the needs of the company?
Yeah, this has changed a lot actually over the years. When I started Outdoor Fest, I was not taking any weekends. I was just like working all the time. And it might have been necessary, especially for that first summer, getting it off the ground. But at this point, I really prioritize sleeping. That's a big one because I notice how much it influences my mood, and also long-term, my output is actually lower if I don't sleep. So from like an optimization perspective, it doesn't actually help. Like maybe you get an extra hour on one day or 2 hours, whatever it is, but the pace at which I can work and the quality of the work goes down. So that's been a big one. And then exercise, as much as possible, outdoor exercise is awesome. I love to bike. I love to ski. That stuff fills my soul. But I think even just like getting sweaty a little bit every day helps me just like calm down and like be more present, and all those things that, science has shown are really helpful for, work.
What's your biggest hot tip for people on that balance? What commits you to balance?
Hot tip. Well, one thing I'm trying to work on, so this is not something I'm always good at, I will say, but I'm really trying to do exercise first thing in the morning. So I find that if I do that, I just feel better all day. And that is just like very doable. My challenge is I'm extremely addicted to coffee. So it's hard for me to be awake for more than 20 minutes without drinking coffee. So that's like just something I'm dealing with right now. But I think stuff like that, where you can figure out how to either like time something a certain way or prioritize something that makes a big impact, maybe. I don't know. I can talk about time management tips if that's helpful. I don't know what.
Well, so here's the question. Do you exercise before or after coffee?
Oh, I exercise before coffee. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What do you usually do? What are some of your routine?
I usually kind of rotate. That's the word I was looking for.
Mix it up a little bit.
I rotate. I love yoga. Big yoga fan. So definitely do yoga a few times a week. I started running this summer. I ran in high school and I like basically haven't run since then. So that's been like an interesting experience to be reintroduced to a sport at a very different age. But it's really easy just to like put on shoes and go outside and run. And it's really nice out right now. So it's just like an easy way to get into the woods. And then, biking as much as possible. So yeah, if I can get outside, I will. Otherwise, I do some yoga usually.
Great. And then you're set up for the rest of the day. If you're like me, by the end of the day, my energy is waning, that it's harder to exercise at the end of the day. And I notice that when I exercise in the morning, I feel smug all day.
Exactly. You're like, I am the kind of person that exercises in the morning.
Yeah. Then I talked a lot about self-leadership, and I love that idea of self-leadership. And then we were just talking about, having to do it all as a business owner. How do you manage the stuff you don't love to do?
Great question. So I set deadlines for myself and hold myself accountable, because I know like workday Sarah, Monday morning Sarah knows that Tuesday afternoon Sarah does not want to do it. So setting up for that inevitable emotional reaction to certain, tasks is helpful. How do
you do that?
I use a Pomodoro timer. I think so there's this thing called Pomodoro method, which I think is like officially 25 minutes on and 5 minutes off or something of that sort. I just use, it's like tomatotimer.com, and just press start. And so I'll block out my day accordingly, especially when I have to do things that I'm not that psyched on. And I'll say like, okay, this is like, at 9 a.m., we're going to tomato timer this task. And then at, let's say 10 a.m., we're going to tomato timer this task. And I don't have the focus to just do 25/5 all day. Like that's insane. I need longer breaks. But I will use it specifically for things that I struggle focusing on because they're unpleasant for me or just like not as much fun. And so, so press start on the timer. So beginning of the day or beginning of the week, however I'm planning it out, I know when I'm going to do that task, and I have like specific times for it. So I just like know that's when I'm doing it.
Are you a person that checks things off the list? Like, so do you create the schedule for yourself and
Yes.
And is that how, and that's how you hold yourself accountable?
Exactly.
Wow. I love that. And how far ahead will you plan your week?
It depends. I go through
Mhm.
phases. Right now I'm in a day-to-day type planning phase. But sometimes I will, especially with like bigger projects, or if I'm really trying to juggle a lot of things, I have to do it a week at a time. And I have this planner where there's like morning, middle of the day, and evening, and there's just lines. I mean, it's like basically blank. I wish I don't have it right here, otherwise I would show you. But I'm very visual and I like pen and paper. So I'll be like morning chunk, afternoon chunk, evening chunk, and that just helps me like separate it a little bit, and B, again, with the deadlines, like knowing like this is the thing I have to get done this morning because it says it in this little planner. And that can be really helpful as well.
That really takes discipline.
Yeah.
When did you decide or realize that to be successful as a business owner, that you had to create this discipline for yourself?
Yeah. I would say like when I wasn't getting things done that I wanted to get done, when I had goals that I wasn't achieving, and it was, why? And often, rarely is the answer like, I actually don't have enough time. It's more like I didn't prioritize, or I didn't complete it. I didn't prioritize. That's really what it is when it comes down to it. So trying to really be intentional about what I prioritize, and also like, I will sometimes spend too much time on things I like. And so there's some level of like, this is a job. You're not allowed to just like, this is like my self-talk. You're not allowed to just like redesign your website every day, like that's not your job. And so like being able to notice, I guess, be aware that I was doing stuff like that. And then really asking myself, like, is that what you want to accomplish in a week or whatever, or a month or whatever it is? And then, yeah.
That's interesting you say that, because I might not have been as disciplined as you. I'm really learning something from you of that time chunk piece. But one way I did is I'd make my list for the day or the week, and then I'd look at them and say, which one has the most energy for me now? And then I would work on it. But it's also easy to avoid, like you said, those things that we need to do. When you actually schedule this out, do you put the things you don't really love to do in between the things you love to do? Are you intentional about that?
Yeah. And I know certain times of day I'm better at certain things.
Okay.
So I'll schedule that too. Like I always do like social media at night, because I don't need to be as like, it's not like deep work for me. And then I'll do like deeper work in the morning or something. So yeah, I do try to plan it based on the time of day. And I also like think it's pretty important to say that I am not perfect at this at all. Like I definitely struggle, and some days get totally off track and don't follow this. So, I know, at least like when I hear other people talking about their systems and their routines, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I don't have that level of discipline. I'm failure, and I think it's important to be like, just doing better, and always just like trying to do better and figuring out those things that give you energy, and balancing it is important, so that like people, I don't know, I think there's sometimes like a little bit of like whitewashing around all of this stuff that makes it look a lot easier than it is. And so I recognize that it's hard for everyone, and I definitely struggle with it sometimes.
Sarah, at what point do you know that you need to ask for help?
Yeah. So for me, I think there's like a few different indicators. Like I have just like my burnout ask for help. And the way I know I need that is I don't like doing my passion things. So like in the winter, if I'm not like psyched to go skiing, or I don't want to go for a bike ride, like that's a big indicator for me, because it's just like, why don't you want to do a thing that you're excited about? And I'm just exhausted, like emotionally or mentally exhausted. I also get like a little bit messier. So there's like a visual cue of like, I don't know, don't do the dishes or something, right? Like something stupid, but like, it just is like something easy that for me is easy to do usually. And when it gets hard for me to do, it's like there's obviously something else happening or going on. So I would say those are some indicators. And then I think for the business, it is just being really aware of how much time and effort things are taking. So usually for me with the business, the asking for help happens when I am not good enough at something to make it work for the business. So an example of that is often like web design, because I like it a lot. I'm really slow at it and not that good at it. So there are some times when I'm like, okay, I've spent like 8 hours on this and it really doesn't look that much better. Like this is something that I'm going to need to ask for help for, because the 8 hours of my time is not a good use of resources. So I think just paying attention sometimes helps with that as well.
A lot of what you're speaking to is self-awareness. Like you really have to have this high level of self-awareness to be able to be honest with yourself, check in, hold yourself accountable, all those things. How do you grow your own self-awareness?
Yeah. Great question. So I think that writing things down has always been really helpful for me. So recording things, whether that's like just even with the to-do list, right? You're checking things off. So there's like a visual record of what you did or did not achieve in the day. And then I don't know. I mean, I don't think actually I have a really good tip here on like process. It is just developed over time. Being able to see kind of changes and wanting to be, I want to wake up in the morning and be really excited about what I'm doing in the day and like gung ho and like that, like work out immediately and then drink my coffee and all of that. And so when I'm not doing that, I will, take a step back and question why.
Going back to leadership, what type of leaders inspire you?
Yeah. I was thinking about this question, and I think for me, like the pinnacle of leadership is being able to bring the best out of other people. Like that's when I have my big team, my, huge corporate office. I think that that's really, and even now, right? I have chapter leaders in our different chapters for Happy Hour, but when they like step up and like really do awesome stuff and are creative or push themselves in some way or rise to some challenge, like I think that for me is the most exciting part of being a leader. And it also, when I see other people be leaders, the part that I am most impressed with, because it is hard to like continually motivate people to, bring their full selves or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
You also talked about holding a higher vision for the people that work with you. How do you do that?
Yeah, this is something that I've had to get comfortable with over time through the business. I obviously had this idea, wanted to start a company, was comfortable with that element of it, but being able to step into the role of the person that is communicating that and unwaveringly and confidently when, obviously with every business, there's always things that are happening in the background, especially with live events, right? A million things are going wrong at all times. And that's part of it. That's just like how that works. And so the vision part has really been something where I have to push myself a little bit to really be focusing on communicating that, even when, smaller things are happening or things might have gone along a slightly different path, whatever that may be, so that everyone knows kind of like what direction the ship is going in kind of thing. And so that is something I definitely have to practice, because I am very, as everyone can see, very chatty, so I'm just like, oh yeah, this other thing happened, and like, that's fine. But like, as long as I can continue to communicate how that fits into something larger, I think that I just think it's important.
Well, especially when it's initially your vision, and then inspiring everyone to get on board with that vision.
Totally. Yeah.
Not being shy about that.
Yeah.
So with that, what's the why? The why for your business?
The why for my business is that I just believe that everyone should have access to the outdoors. And I think that cities specifically are a really great place to start with that, especially because so many people live in cities. And so by focusing on an urban, group of people and increasing urban participation, whatever that may look like, I do feel like we can change the conversation on like what outdoorsy is, what getting outside means, all of that stuff, but then also have advocates for green spaces, for resilient cities, for all the elements that are going to make cities livable long term. And so, yeah, ultimately our why is, or my why is because I want to see more people get outside. And yeah, I guess that period.
Yeah, it's healthy for everybody.
It is.
Each other and planet.
Yeah.
So I'm noticing the time and I want to open it up to our audience for questions. So if anyone's out there, please introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, and ask Sarah a great question.
I'm ready.
And she's ready. And meanwhile, I just want to introduce please join us next week on Wednesday. Usually the lives are on Wednesday. We did this one on Tuesday. Next week, we have Rebecca Caitlin joining us to talk about, I love this, how we can hold ourselves back by trying to be perfect or over-prepared. And so join us next Wednesday at the same time for that hot topic. That's going to be a good one. I love that one. I never do that. No, ever. All right. Is there anyone out there? I noticed, Sarah, that the link to Facebook was having trouble.
Oh, really?
Yeah. When you have that experience, is there anything you can do to get your live support here?
Well, usually I go check. Should we check to see if it's happening?
Yeah, let's check.
What is the Facebook group called?
Professional Women Empowered to Lead. I'll let you check so I don't lose my whole link here.
Oh, no, we're live.
We are live?
We're
good.
Live. Hey, everyone.
Hi. Ask us a question. Come on. Bring it. I love it.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting for potential questions, I'm going to take advantage of you here, Sarah. I'm going to be posting the link to my Facebook, the group, Peak Leadership Experience, as well as my website. So if women want to learn more about the program, more about coaching, you can sign up for a free call with me to talk about your business and what you're doing and if any way I can help you. But meanwhile, Sarah, what did you appreciate most about the Peak Leadership Experience?
Yeah, so I alluded to this a little bit before, but I think in terms of big picture, being able to understand leadership in a way that felt accessible to me and didn't just feel like something that you only can do if, you have worked in a specific company or had a very specific type of training or something like that. I think that probably is, could be wrapped up in the word confidence, which I know you use as a way to describe the experience. I think confidence in understanding my own skills as leadership and having words, even though I'm like struggling a little bit right now, but like starting to develop the language to be able to describe that, both for myself, for a team, for, outside stakeholders and all of that.
Mm-hmm. What would you say your biggest personal aha was of learning about you?
So we took the standout assessment, which is really fun. And my two standout qualities are influencer and connector. And I think two elements of that were ahas for me. One is I think Instagram has like broken my brain a little bit about the word influencer. And at first I was like, I can't believe I'm an influencer. That is awful. And then I like read the paragraph about it and was like, oh, actually like what this means is a bit different than kind of like the more traditional or the way that the word influencer is used right now. And kind of starting to be okay with that role for myself. So that was one aha. And then the second was just really thinking about how to combine those two things, or how I'm already combining those two things with Mappy Hour, with Outdoor Fest, and how important that is to my business, and not just something I've just done naturally, but that it is something that is strategic as well.
Yeah, because sometimes we do something naturally without even thinking about it. So how has, like, knowing that you're an influencer connector, how has that helped your business, like in the intentional piece of that?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so sneak peek, everyone, this is not public yet. Working on, I know, right? A community membership for Mappy Hour. And this is something I have always been really uncomfortable with, because I haven't necessarily seen myself as the role of an influencer, but I think that understanding that the influence is more of like encouraging people to share, let's say, or encouraging people to like learn something new or whatever it may be, that actually is a form of influence that fits with kind of like my goals and my values and all of that. So yeah, being able to say like this kind of like online community, which it's basically a forum, that is something that I will, be able to run and lead and deliver the right value to my audience and my members, was something that I definitely was able to get to because of that standout assessment.
And I love it, because you are a connector. You're connecting people who are urban city dwellers to the outdoors, and that's a wonderful mission, Sarah. I love the work you do. You're so unique and such a spirited, wonderful woman. I loved having you in my program. We had such fun. We are kindred entrepreneur spirits.
Wow, I can't wait till we meet in person someday.
I know, instead of from afar. So I just want to thank everyone for joining us on this live session with Sarah Knapp. And we hope to see you next Wednesday at the same time, same station, for our new topic. So thanks, everyone. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.